Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network. And welcome back, everybody. This gentleman has made it his life's work to make life better for the rest of us. And a lot of those things we take for granted when you drive into the village or your city, the area around you, when you look at the housing developments, when you take mass transit. It's all part of urban planning, and that's what he's done for many years as a regional planner at the University of Pittsburgh. He's taught, he's had so many different projects he's worked on. He's our man of the year, and he's back with us. Richard Golden Bickel Jr. joins us on the program. Hey, Richard, how you doing?
Okay, Steve. How are you?
Good. Great to have you back here. And I love that anytime there's anything trending in terms of a transportation story, you got your finger on the pulse of that. And one in particular, the biggest city in the world, New York City, the transportation secretary is calling the city subway system a, shall we say, blank hole. And that's the language they used. And people are taking offense to that. Did you hear that story that came out yesterday? I
read it in the Times.
That's a pretty strong critique of subway system there in a big metropolitan area, right?
Well, there are two kinds of transit systems. One, the so-called legacy systems, New York, Boston. They've been around for years and years, and they've tried to accomplish their mission of transporting people around the city, and they're old, and in some cases needing major overhauls of systems, and that means lots of money. And they're also competing with new ideas, which have more appeal than the mundane idea of replacing things that you can't even see for the average person. And so I'm sympathetic, and I think Pete Buttigieg's comments were probably valid, but at the same time, you have to put it in context.
Well, if you look at the numbers, and this is not tainted, this is actual factual information. Crime in the New York City subway system down 40% compared to the same period in 2020, right before the pandemic. And violent crime, very rare. It seems like that is down. Overall, I get, and you know what? It's a great point you bring up, because most people look at what they can see, what they understand. Like, for example, people may say, these trains, these subways, they're always dirty. They don't even clean them. All right. But there's a lot more going on behind the scenes on the technical end, on the mechanical end, to keep things moving. And sometimes a lot of people just focus on one thing, but don't realize the big picture of what's going on behind the scenes, right?
Right. And the perception of crime is partly related to the high profile that murders or people being pushed off the platform in the path of a subway car, and those kinds of things make everyone stop and think, do I want to keep riding that system? And some are forced to do it because they're transit dependent. They don't have a car, or their job requires them to get to places that otherwise they wouldn't be able to get to. Sure. And so, again, it's a context thing, and it's the perception of crime. In Philadelphia, it's the same thing. The leading stories every night are people shooting each other and other crimes, and occasionally transit crimes, but not necessarily at the same level as New York City. Yep.
And to your point, they're not singling out the transportation secretary, not singling out any one particular thing, just saying as a whole, overall, that the subway system is not the greatest. What's your overall opinion? You being familiar with New York City, what's your just overview of the way the system is?
Well, I first used the system in the 70s when I was out of graduate school and getting ready to work in my first job in Montgomery County, Pennsylvania. And I thought the cars were pretty ramshackle. They had a lot of graffiti. There was, again, a perception of that it was dangerous to use the system. But it's overall geographically a magnificent system that covers all over the place. And the recent push for congestion pricing was to get people to ride on the system and to use public transit rather than vehicles in the downtown part of the city. And it's off to a pretty good start.
Yeah, and that's the same transportation secretary is seeking to end the congestion pricing. He has it out for New York. I don't know what's going on.
Well, I didn't hear. Oh, that may be the. Well, first of all, the president doesn't like congestion pricing.
Yeah,
and his transportation secretary, who is not Pete Buttigieg, may have said that they're trying to end it. But that's another issue. If transit's going to be improved and funds are made available to make those improvements, you've got to have some consistency because these projects don't occur overnight. And if every 4 years there's a change in policy, that's not a real good background for a better transit system.
I think they did a fairly good job with Grand Central in New York City. Some of those improvements, I mean, it did take a long time. I'll give them that. But overall, I think it was time for a change, and I think they did a fairly decent job.
Yeah, the Moynihan Train Hall is outstanding.
Yeah.
Efforts to do things to Madison Square Garden, which needs some work, and other places like that, they can be the foundation of a much better system that's going to be around for another 100 years at least.
I saw a couple of weeks ago there was some talk about some people saying to renovate or move Madison Square Garden, and of all the things that you have to worry about in a city, that would be the last one. I mean, can you imagine?
Well, they want to move it to the what's it called, the where the train yards are, and build over them, and it's near the High Line, and they would try to relocate the sports center over there where there's plenty of room, and do something else around Grand Central and Madison Square Garden.
I want to pivot over now to some emails that we've gotten last time we got together, and you really do resonate with the audience, especially those looking for a career in urban planning or fields related to that. I've got Tammy checking in, Oakland, California. instantfeedbacksteve@gmail.com is how you can reach us. And she says, my son is in the 11th grade and very interested in how cities are put together. At his age, what courses should he be considering if he decides on urban planning as a career?
And he's in 11th grade?
Yeah, high school, 11th grade.
Yeah, so, well, if he's thinking about getting a college degree, civil engineering is one field that is related to planning, and there are undergraduate programs in urban planning that are accredited by the American Planning Association, and those courses have a diversity of work that would prepare you very well for a career in urban planning or regional planning or even transportation planning.
In high school, so he's got another year left in high school, and those courses are all over the place, all different ones. Anything that stands out that you would suggest he take at this point in his final year?
If there's some kind of survey course that talks about environmental issues and infrastructure and planning concepts, that would be desirable. I'm not sure if that's available at the high school level. It certainly would be at the college level. And the main thing is I started in pre-med at the University of Pittsburgh thinking I was going to be a doctor, and ended up a planner because I didn't do well in pre-med, and I discovered I took an urban geography course as a junior and decided to orient my whole career from medicine to planning as a result of that course, and also staying at Pitt in their master's program in urban and regional planning. So you should not get discouraged in your freshman year if you have problems with a certain venue of courses. There's plenty out there, and college is a great place to look around for what you really want to do, and not necessarily what you thought you were going to do when you were in high school.
And on a fundamental level, now a lot of times we take a look at some of the classes in high school and we say, why do I got to take that? I'm never going to use that. Things like math, geometry, maybe some science classes. Do you feel that there's, they can be impactful if somebody's considering a career in urban planning?
Well, the courses are often required by the state, and like in New York State, and the curriculum is dependent on that. At the same time, if there are electives or chances to do different things, I would say that you should take them, and you should also consider reading about planning and deciding if that's something you want to do. There's so much now that's covered that wasn't covered in the 60s and 70s. It's amazing. I mean, you have affordable housing issues, you have transportation infrastructure issues, you have public transit and transit-oriented development that are talked about in articles almost every week. And they're all fundamental to becoming a planner and knowing what it's like to be a planner.
When I look back, I didn't take psychology. I dropped out of it, and I regret it. So I don't want to sound like, when I was your age, I should have done, but it's the truth. Like, I regret taking, and even, not a fan of math, never has been, my best subject, but I do see, where it benefits later in life. And a lot of times we don't realize that. I got Josh, Dallas, Texas, checks in. He says, I planned on a career as an architect. I've been thinking about pivoting to civil engineering or urban planning. I'm about halfway through my studies of architecture. Do you feel that will be beneficial if I change career?
Well, I think architecture and urban design are very important parts of planning. And it's certainly a good lead-in to a change in your career. And the concepts that you learn about how to work with people, work with clients, and how to inform them about the principles of design and planning and how they can work together to create better communities is really important.
Do you have a love of architecture in doing what you're doing? Like, for example, do you go to different cities and look at the way things are put together and appreciate every city's got a different look to it? Has that ever been on your radar?
Yeah, when I go to a city, and usually they were a result of conferences that were sponsored by the American Planning Association and others. I always enjoyed seeing the different cities, how they had developed, and what their long-range plan was, what they had envisioned for the future. And all those things are ingredients to becoming a good planner. Don't just think it's once you have your degree, you're done. You're constantly learning, and that's why I made a point to go to these planning conferences, and I was fortunate enough that the people I worked for at the county level and particularly at the regional level, they appreciated the fact that these conferences were not just junkets to have a good time. They were also learning experiences, and that was invaluable.
I know you've mentioned it before, but I just find it so interesting that you were looking at a career in medicine, the medical field, before
right.
you got into the field of urban planning. When you were younger, was that even on your radar, doing what you've done so far now for many years?
No, it was not on my radar. The idea of being a doctor was from a couple of television shows that were around in the 60s that made it seem pretty glamorous and also very important to help people through medicine. And that's how I got the first inclination that I wanted to be a doctor. And as soon as I took organic chemistry and didn't do well, I realized I wasn't going to be a doctor.
I'm right there with you. I don't even want to get into me and chemistry and science. Although I love tech stuff, it just never excited me. And I think part of it because I was just focused on doing more creative things than that. Right. I've got another email, instantfeedbacksteve@gmail.com. And this is Mike, who's checking in from Ocala, Florida. He says, if I get a master's in urban planning, can I focus on specific areas such as transportation planning? I'm also looking at maybe being a public works director. Can you share some insight?
Oh, well, that will certainly give you an experience with infrastructure in a community and the problems of service delivery. And at the same time, you want to take courses that tie into this. One thing I didn't do, I never took an economics course as an undergraduate at Pitt. And when I started working, I said, I need to know more about economics. And I bought a book called Economics by Paul Samuelson, which was invaluable in just getting some fundamental concepts. And also, you want to read the book if you can hold it. It's a heavy book. It's The Power Broker about Robert Moses, the famous planner, called a planner, but really a doer more than anything else, because he was the transportation czar of New York during the Rockefeller administration. He had the support of the governor. He had the Metropolitan Transportation Authority, and he accomplished a lot. He was not a friend of public transit. If you drive some of the parkways that leave New York and head out into the suburbs in Nassau County, he purposely designed the bridges so that buses would not fit underneath, and that's not good given the changing needs for transportation.
Why? I've heard that before, and I try to process that. Richard, why do you think Robert Moses was not a fan of public transportation?
Well, he was a highway guy, and he wanted to put an expressway through Washington Square Park in the Village. He wanted to put roads all over the place. Some were successful, and some would have been devastating for the communities that he wanted to target these projects. And so he had the power, and he had political support, and he accomplished a lot. But there are certain projects like what to do with Grand Central Station that cause all kinds of political reaction and grassroots negative comments. And that's why Grand Central was saved. That was supposed to be a totally different building on top of what was supposed to be a great train station. And the Pennsylvania station that was torn down was a gem, and it was what we have now is the station under Madison Square Garden.
You know, it's strangely ironic, that story today that we started with, where the transportation secretary was had names, very non-positive names for the New York City subway system. Fox 5 New York. So one of the TV channels in New York sent a reporter out to just talk to strap hangers, just people who take the subway, and get their feedback on the comments from the secretary. Do you know what the reporter's name is?
No.
Robert Moses.
Oh.
You can't make that up. Like I did a double take. I'm like, why are they referring to Robert Moses in this story? And that's the reporter's name, Robert Moses. I double checked it. I couldn't believe it. It's crazy. Maybe I believe things are meant to be. I don't know. It's kind of funny that, maybe, I don't know if they intentionally sent him out for this story. And how ironic you're talking today about Robert Moses, the builder, not being a fan of mass transit. So strange.
Yeah, well, the book won the Pulitzer Prize.
Oh, wow.
Written by Robert Caro, and it's with footnotes. It's got to be 1,000 pages, but it's a real education in how to get things done and how to have power in a major metropolitan area.
Yeah, well, use Robert Moses, as an example. He did a lot for the New York region, suburban area. Just the developments he put up and the roads and everything. So I would find that a very interesting read, and not just because I'm in or from the New York area. I just been learning more and more about him, and he had an agenda, but he also, like you said, he was a doer. He got things done.
Right.
By the way, I want to reach anybody who wants to reach out to us, instantfeedbacksteve@gmail.com. You ever have a question based on anything, even a comment based on what we're talking about, you can always reach us. Richard, as always, great having you on here. Love all the insight. People are loving it, especially those looking for a career in urban planning or just planning in municipalities. And I appreciate you being here once again.
Thank you, Steve.
Thanks. And we will be right back. Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
It's Thursday night, and you're grabbing drinks with some friends. Started off with a pitcher for the table, which quickly becomes two. There's pool. And there's the photo booth.
All right, everybody squeeze in. Say cheese!
Followed naturally by an order of wings. And another.
Can we get some extra ranch sauce?
Then there's the ceremonial nightcap.
So what are we doing this weekend?
And lastly, it's back to the car, which, if you're buzzed, could be the most expensive night of your life. Getting pulled over for buzzed driving could cost you around $10,000 in fines, legal fees, and increased insurance rates. Nothing kills a buzz like getting pulled over for buzzed driving, because buzzed driving is drunk driving. Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.